This is our first ever webinar, and I'm so glad that you could come and, get the knowledge and that you could put to use. This introductory training into Bondbreaker will look at the importance of curing, fly ash and stake casting, as well as weather and waste considerations, the selection capabilities of Bondbreaker, as well as much more. And here to provide us with her chemical knowledge is Holly Juergens, our chemical product manager. Holly?
Thank you very much, Heidi. So again, as Heidi said, welcome everyone to our Bondbreakers 101. Some of the things we're going to talk about today, as Heidi mentioned, is obviously the importance of curing, Bondbreakers, and any kind of compatible curing membranes that we have, stack casting, how fly ash affects your tilt-up jobs, weather considerations, waste slabs, Bondbreaker selection, painting, and last but not least, concrete and Bondbreaker placement. So just a reminder that all of these factors can and will have bearing on the successful outcome of your tilt-up project. So what are Bondbreakers? So Bondbreakers are used to prevent the adhesion of a newly placed concrete slab to its substrate, whether that's a waste slab or the floor of your building. It's needed at a construction joint for unbonded topping slabs. A curing compound, formulase agent, and the like can also act as a Bondbreaker. So they're used in tilt wall construction. However, they're specifically formulated for that purpose, and the chemistry involved with these is different than other Bondbreakers. Why would you use a Bondbreaker? They're primarily used in tilt-up construction. They are used in some precast applications with match casting, and they're also used in mainline paving. They're a great way to be able to construct your building. It's a simple process of getting that Bondbreaker put down on your slab, pouring your next slab, and having that tilted up. So for Bondbreakers, our goal is this. You have nice, clean, easy lift on your panels. You don't have any kind of residue sticking to them, no issues when it comes to lifting them up, and then being able to secure them in place. This is something that you don't want in terms of sticking panels with your Bondbreaker. So this can result from a multitude of issues, whether the Bondbreaker was misapplied or something went wrong with the actual slab that you applied on. But it's something that we don't want to see when we're using Bondbreaker in our tilt jobs. We also don't want to see broken panels. This is something that can also arise from the poor application of your Bondbreaker. One of the things that's super important before putting your Bondbreaker down is to make sure that you're curing your slab. So curing helps with permeability or density. It's going to help increase the compressive strength of your concrete. Any kind of cracking, dusting, that's going to help be relieved by your application of your cure. It's going to help promote that abrasion resistance and any kind of loss of durability. So improper curing can lead to all kinds of issues with what you see here listed. If you're not going to cure, you might have issues with your compressive strength or some permeability issues, which will then affect the application of your Bondbreaker. So we have some systems developed. Dayton does not recommend using any other cures or sealers under its Bondbreakers than those that we have listed due to compatibility issues. So when it comes to Bondbreaker and cure compatibility for a water-based system, we offer two water-based products, Dayton J6WB and Maxi Tilt with Dye. You can use Clear Resin Cure J11W as your cure before putting your Bondbreaker down. Just needs to allow it to dry about 3 to 4 days, and to make sure that dissipation has not begun on that before you put your Bondbreaker down. Some of our water-based cure and seal options are listed below, from our J18 down through our 1315 EF, as long as that one specifically is applied carefully. So the successful outcome, as I mentioned, of Bondbreakers is going to rely heavily on well-finished and well-cured casting slabs. This is something that we have learned throughout the years of our use of Bondbreakers, that it is a necessity. So you want to be sure that you're curing your slabs and you're curing them properly. We also have a pretty extensive solvent-based system. So we've got our SureLift with dye J6D, one of our most popular products. And then this can be used with any of our solvent-based cure and seal. So we have the J20UV, J22UV, and J23UV, depending on needs for your solids numbers. We also have low VOC product, our SureLift J6 low VOC, as well as our low VOC cure and seal product, which is our J20 low VOC and our J23 low VOC. Just a reminder for the rules of the road when it comes to compatibility, you can put water over water, solvent over solvent, and you can also get away with water-based over solvent-based, but you never want to put solvent over water. If you have any questions about this, it's best to just stick with water over water and solvent over solvent. Again, water over solvent can be acceptable, but never use solvent over water. As I mentioned before, we do have our SureLift J6 low VOC. It is not compatible with other cures or cure and seals. It has very hot solvents in it. The reason for this is that obviously it is formulated to make sure that it is usable in those low VOC regions, and the J6 low VOC should always be used as your cure coat. If you have any questions about using our J6 low VOC or any of our other bond breakers along with our cures and cure and seals, do not hesitate to reach out to our Dayton Spheres technical service team. They are a great resource for all of your product needs. So getting into stack casting, so the same principles as seen at work in waste slabs and casting slabs also apply to stack cast as well. So you want to be using a C309 curing compound, should be applied followed by a bond breaker. Stack casts do have a tendency to stick, so make sure that you're applying that bond breaker appropriately. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to that upside or what's considered the backside of the panel face. So again, make sure you're doing your proper curing and you're properly applying that bond breaker to the upside. Waste slab considerations. So massive waste slab, much less relative to the tilt wall panel. So good finishing here is a little bit more critical. When it comes to waste slabs, they're often used when the number of panels to be cast exceeds the amount of floor of the building, or simply for convenience if that's what the job takes. You have to take care of these as they will be seen sticking to your panels. You want to do at least a minimum of 3 inches per the guidelines that TCA has put in place. So this is an example of a waste slab that was not treated properly and ended up on the wall. And here's where it came from. So this is the damaged waste slab that ended up on the wall after it was not treated properly with the bond breaker. So a little bit about fly ash. So fly ash is a byproduct of coal burning and power plants. It's often used to replace some of the Portland cement and products. The problem with this is that some fly ash can actually increase the permeability of the casting slab, which will then require additional bond breaker. So there's 2 different kinds of fly ash, class F and class C. The reason you want to be aware of this, like I said, is going to depend on the effect that it's going to have on your slab and how it takes that bond breaker. So understanding what product you're using in your slab and understanding how that's going to affect how much bond breaker needs to be applied. Weather is also going to affect your bond breaker usage. If there's rain, you might need to recoat your bond breaker if necessary. If it's cool or damp, this is going to increase that bond breaker drying time. So it's going to allow more time between your subsequent bond breaker applications to assure that preceding bond breaker application is dry. And then in hot and dry conditions, panels should be poured within 7 days. So a lot of these effects that you're going to see from either using fly ash or weather, this is the reason why there's always ranges on our technical data sheets in terms of how much you should be applying, because all of these conditions are going to affect that number. So weather considerations, if there's rain, you might need to clean and recoat if necessary to make sure that there is no sticking. If it's hot and windy, they said hot and dry and windy conditions will actually increase the slab drying. One of the ways to help prevent this is to use a product such as our Aquafilm Concentrate J74. This is an evaporation retardant that does help keep that slab from getting away from you. then you're going to cure immediately. And prior to that first Bondbreaker application, you want to flood the slab with water to cool the concrete, reduce that permeability, and then squeegee off any excess. Then apply your Bondbreaker application. You can also have the option of pouring panels at night if your job allows for it. And then again, to flood panels with water. Concrete consolidation is something else to consider. So you're moving your concrete with shovels or rakes, not with a vibrator. So vibrating screeds over panel is also a good choice. You can use a short head vibrator sparingly. Over vibration can cause segregation and honeycomb issues. So do not scour the casting slab with pump or line. So slab finish. So most casting slabs are steel troweled finish, which is going to decrease your surface permeability. So be sure to use a curing method that meets ACI 318 and use a high quality Bondbreaker for optimal casting results when you have that hard troweled finish. Getting into the application of the Bondbreaker, always apply 2 coats of Bondbreaker at a minimum. For spray applications, we do have application rates for our J6D at about 500 square feet per gallon, and you're going to do that again a minimum twice. And then our J6WB is actually about 400 square feet per gallon twice. Remember, whatever's on your slab is going to come up on the wall. So make sure you're removing any excess or spills that occur, because if you have those spills on your slab and you pour your next one on top of it and you tilt that up, it's most likely going to come up on your wall as well. So make sure your slabs are clean of any kind of excess product or spills. That second coat that you want to apply of the Bondbreaker, you want to do at a right angle to the first coat. This just ensures that you're going to have the best application of your Bondbreaker and that the entire panel will be covered without any spots missing. Next, you want to check and evaluate the Bondbreaker before you pour your slab down. So you'll have a visual inspection, making sure it's uniform, even, and consistent. You can do a water bead test. So this should bead kind of like water on a waxed car. And then it should have a nice waxy feel. So that waxy feel, when you rub your fingers across it, it might also feel like you can almost bring the material up with you whenever you run your fingers across it. So as a visual inspection, this was a water-based Bondbreaker that wasn't mixed properly. So with all water-based products, normally you have to make sure that you're mixing well. In this case, this one was not mixed, so the solids actually went down first and the water last, which is going to give you that white milky appearance. So this is an issue that you can see easily, visually, and know that you had a problem with your mix. You're going to want to remove and reapply. Another visual inspection that you might see is some rust shadows or dusting after like 2 weeks or so with rain, and most likely a bad spray tip if you look at the spray pattern. Again, as I mentioned, you want to do that water bead test. So this is obviously not beading. So when you see this, then you'll know that your Bondbreaker was not applied properly. What you want to be able to see is a nice beading effect. So that should look, like I said, if you've ever had water beads done like on a wax car, or if you put that rain preventative on your windshield and it beads up nicely, that's the kind of look that you're going for to know that your Bondbreaker has been applied properly. Just a quick note on painting. Painting is the responsibility of the painting contractor, not the company. Bondbreakers normally require a minimum of 30 to 60 days to begin to oxidize. It's going to take a little bit longer if you over apply it when they're exposed to sunlight. So the biggest reason for paint failure is going to be moisture in the panels. No more than 5% or amount recommended by the paint manufacturer. So you want to make sure that that moisture is out of your panel. This is a list of the Dayton Sphere Bondbreakers, touched on them earlier. We've got our SureLift with dye, J6D, our SureLift J6WB, our Maxi tilt with dye, and our SureLift J6 low VOC. Some of the advantages of our J6D is it can be used as a Bondbreaker or cure when applied at 200 square feet per gallon on a hard troweled surface. It's chemically reactive. It's not as vulnerable to rain wash-off, which is great whenever you've got rainy weather. It resists foot traffic once dried and has excellent coverage rates. Our J6WB, as noted, is a water-based product, which means it meets all VOC regulations in the United States. If you're not needing a solvent-based low VOC product, this is a great one to use. It's still chemically reactive, and it does a great job resisting rain and weather, and it leaves nice clean panels with no resin stains. Maxi Tilt with dye is very similar to our J6WB. This one actually contains a fugitive dye, as the name states, so it's easy to apply, see where it's been put down, and make sure you're not missing any areas. Just a quick Bondbreaker summary. So Bondbreaker use does require knowledge. It's not something that you want to just go out there and start throwing it down on the slab. It tends to get blamed for problems that are not actually the product itself, but normally not following instructions or guidelines outlined in the data sheet. So I highly suggest that you look up the technical data sheet for our products, which can be found on our website. We also have a guide to tilt up Bondbreakers that you can look at on our website as well. And even though it is a small component of the job, putting down your Bondbreaker in a manner that's not appropriate is going to lead to some very expensive remedies to fix those problems, especially if you have, like we saw in some of the pictures earlier, your slab's going to stick to your wall whenever you tilt it up. It's a very high liability product that if something goes wrong, it can cause a lot of issues. And again, be very expensive to fix those issues. All right, thank you again for your time. We are going to open it for questions in the chat if you have any for us.
Thank you, Holly. We currently don't have any questions in chat. Give some people time to put them in if they'd like me to state them. So go ahead and type in your questions within the chat area. You can find that in the bottom of your screen, and it's labeled chat. Open that up and you can type your questions in.
Sorry, Heidi, I didn't hear that.
Curious if you had a question for us?
No, I don't.
Right. All right, well, if there aren't any other questions, thank you, Holly, for presenting, and thank you all for attending our Training Tuesdays. Appreciate it.
So we do have one question.
Oh, good.
Is that what water-based Bondbreaker do we recommend over solvent cures?
The answer is, yeah, the answer is any of the water-based Bondbreakers. Either the J6WB can be used over any of the solvent-based cures.
Fantastic. Any other questions? You can type them into the chat room and we'll say them out loud and answer them for you. All right then, well, I appreciate your time and we'll talk to all of you next Tuesday. Bye.